Project Rebalance, Overview, Scythe, and Fang. Nothing gets me more excited than a title like this on a Jagex blog. Anything regarding rebalancing. I'm a strong advocate for just everything rebalance. I think in old school, there are so many things that are just absolutely dead content that will never ever see a revival unless things like this are done. So absolutely thrilled to see this blog post. I'm so excited to share it with you guys. I've briefly taken a look before I'm going to read this to you. But yeah, nothing stood out as like a sore thumb or anything. So really, it looks like all good stuff. So I'm really excited for the discussion down in the comments. Drop a like on the video if you enjoy it. Be sure to subscribe as well for future rambles. And let's get right into it. A quick note, this post contains a lot of text that isn't really simple to provide a TLDR for. Where possible, we've used bullet points to get the key points across. But if reading isn't your thing, then proceed with caution. Reading is my thing, boys. All right, as we begin our descent into the final month of the year, is that the date already? Our thoughts naturally turn to the future, the big ideas to take us into 2024. Get yourself comfortable because it's time to talk about Project Rebalance. This is a very complex topic, so today's blog will actually be more of an overview with the initial focus on two hotly debated subjects, Scythe of Viter and Osmumten's Fang. I can't believe it didn't say and the Osmumten's Fang. Come on, guys. All right. We'll lay some really good job. We'll lay some groundwork, set expectations for what's to come, and open up the discussion. Then we'll be back in 2024 with much more detailed, dedicated blogs about each topic. This project is huge, and we want you to help us steer it forward. Already so excited. What is Project Rebalance? Project Rebalance started out as a game jam project. Mods Arcane, Halo, Husky, and God, like the fucking like four horsemen, basically. Mods Arcane, Halo, Husky, and Kieran decided to use their jam time to look at improving existing content rather than making something new. The project has evolved quite a bit since then, touching on a range of player and dev concerns around balancing, power creep, reward space, and more. That's the what. The why is a little more complex. Some parts of the initial pitch were all about making underutilized content a little less obsolete, so that players wouldn't find themselves checking the OSRS wiki after a level up message and realizing their brand new unlock wasn't worth their time. Other parts looked at making early game content a little bit more intuitive, namely low-level Slayer, so new adventurers could spend a little less time plugged into a wiki page or YouTube video and more time immersing themselves in Gielinor. So far, so good. Relatively low stakes, nice to have changes. When moving beyond the initial pitch, though, there were more high-stakes questions around existing item power. Some pieces of equipment were doing far too much heavy lifting, others not doing enough to befit their station. And of course, we wanted to lay the foundation for new reward space in the future. As it stands right now, Project Rebalance has undergone some serious expansion, and while we're confident in our rationale for many of the pieces, we want to start sharing our thoughts with you and finding out what you think. A very brief overview. Make sure you're stocked up before stepping into the rest of this hefty blog. All right, there is a lot to go over before Project Rebalance can be put into action. When we're ready, we'll be releasing dedicated blogs for each section with in-depth breakdowns of what we'd like to do and why. In the meantime, let's start with an extremely brief summary of what we'll be tackling in the near future. It might not look all that brief, but in relation to the size of Project Rebalance as a whole, this is definitely just the beginning. Agility, Slayer, Thieving, and miscellaneous skilling tweaks. This section made up the majority of the initial Game Jam pitch. While we're not going to go into specific detail, we'd like to give you a clear idea of everything that's being considered, so that if you have any early thoughts, then we can see how they match up, rather than leaving everybody to run wild with things that might be out of scope. So, what's on the proverbial table? Some rebalancing of agility course XP rates and requirements. Oh my god, that sounds amazing. Removing some fail points that occur really close to the end of an agility course. Adjusting the level/diary requirements for some agility shortcuts while exploring the potential for new high-level shortcuts to make progress feel more rewarding. Yes. Improving the Brimhaven agility dungeon and making it a competitive, high-effort alternative to more typical methods like rooftop courses. Absolutely phenomenal. That's exciting. Rebalancing XP and fail rates at various NPCs to better position them within thieving progression. I hope there's more on that. I don't think there is, but can we like look at failing in general? Because it's not really about this. I mean, clearly it's about the success rate as well, but we can't make the success rate like 99.9% of the time and just fail here and there. But really, the process of being stunned and not being able to do anything in that time is unbearable. It is unbearable. So there's got to be solutions that are better than that keep XP balanced. All right. Rebalancing XP rates, respawn rates, and drop tables of various stalls to make them a little more desirable for everyone, not just pet hunters. Very cool. Improving the gloves of silence, removing various tasks from low-level Slayer masters, adjusting quantity of NPCs offered for low-level Slayer master tasks, adding a new Slayer unique or two to assist with early game Slayer, improving the improving the Dorgish Con light orb activity. That, you guys know I made a video on this specifically. It didn't get that many views because people see a title with Dorgish Con improvement. Everyone's gonna be like, what the fuck? But no, it was really cool. I thought I gave a pretty cool like alternative to just blowing glass and then letting that glass in your bank. There would actually be like a real method going around. Anyway, maybe I'll have that linked in the description as well as this blog post. So go check down the description. Also follow me on Twitch and Twitter while you're down there. Streamlining creation of Guthix rests. Adding make all functionality to barbarian potions. Improving the Ring of Pursuit. Improving the Necklace of Faith. And reworking Efarite's Aid. To reiterate, we'll go into significantly more detail on every single one of these points in a dedicated blog. We're figuratively drowning in spreadsheets and numbers relating to all of the above. In the meantime, we hope this gives you a convenient summary of the type of thing we're looking at. We want to give everyone more of a reason to have a go at interacting with more stalls, NPCs, or agility courses. Not to look at shifting metas, but to give intrepid explorers a little more to be excited about when trying out some of their new unlocks. While some of you might be thinking, sounds like dead content, it's important to remember that there are thousands upon thousands of players who log on every single day without getting involved in social media or reading around much. We'd love for these players to spread themselves out a little and maybe give the Brimhaven Agility Arena a go or pickpocket a paladin or two. Early game Slayer is a whole nother beast and one that we'll cover in proper detail when we get around to this section's dedicated blog. By the way, I want to actually just talk about this real quick because I read this several years back, but you know how when people say a whole other or a whole nother, and people feel like, oh, I can't say a whole nother because that doesn't make sense because nother's not a word. And actually, basically, I forgot what the word is of what they're doing here, but a and nother are actually a combined thing, a combined word, but they're putting whole in between it. So you actually would say a whole nother because another is the word that you're trying to say, but you're shoving whole in between that word. And that's an actual proper thing you can do, apparently. So it's not just whole other and then you feel weird because you said other. It's, yeah, anyway. So I forgot. Somebody in the comments will know what this is called. But yeah, you do it with there's a few different words that you'll do this to where you just shove another word in how do you there's a bunch of words where you include the word fuck in it and it just makes another word. I'm not going to go through a whole list. I can't even think of one off the top of my head right now. I'm not going to pause this ramble to think about it. So if you guys down in the comments know of some other examples, go for it. All right, mining. Another skill, curiously not included with the three we've just mentioned. Mining's been a hot topic since our changes to shooting stars earlier this year, and we want more people enjoying the diversity offered by mining without displacing existing methods or weakening their identity. Here are some of the things we'd like to dig into. Improving motherlode mines positioning as a low-intensity method with some ore output. improving volcanic mines approachability. Yes, like a tutorial or something. That's what I was talking about with One False Step on the Sebe cast. A bunch of stuff on volcanic mine. It was amazing. Improving blast mines viability. Yes. Please add like a point system to that. Well, you know what? I've talked. We're not. This is not my time to shine right now. I'll shine in a different video. Adjusting amethyst vein mining. Adjusting mining gloves to make them feel more desirable for their price. Reconsider the hard Karamja diary requirement for lower gem mine. Improve in-game messaging to encourage charged Amulet of Glory usage while gem mining. Improve clue geode rates from regular. Yes. Improve clue geode rates from regular mining. Add more viable spots for granite sandstone to reduce competition. For players looking to learn tick manipulation methods or just build up their supply of sand on iron accounts. Adjusting Volcano drop system to give players more flexibility to choose between high GP per hour or high XP per hour without impacting uniques. And address group size scaling issues with Volcano that can make finding a world difficult at times. This might look like a lot. Well, it kind of is. But just like the changes in the previous section, we're not looking to shift existing metas in any significant way. Love it or hate it, 3-tick granite or gems will still be the go-to if you're looking to really maximize your gains. Instead, these changes are intended to give players greater flexibility to find mining training methods that suit them, so that the kinds of activities players are engaging with actually reflect the diversity of training methods on offer. Okay, now the heavier stuff. Now, these last two sections would be pretty easy for most players to understand, even if we just released a blog or explainer video. These next sections, however, are the reason we're opting to tackle each section week by week. We'll give you a brief overview of each section and then explain our next steps and what to expect. So hold your horses and please keep reading before you start typing. Run energy changes. This is likely to be the shortest section here. Let's run through it. The top level overview, we'd like to revisit some of the work from 2022's November Game Jam and take a look at run energy drain, run energy regen, and how weight and agility level interact with all of the above. These changes will involve a whole lot of maths and absolutely require a beta before. Definitely we're going to get that beta, right? Before we can discuss this in any detail. We're waiting on engine changes that would be required to make any of these adjustments in the first place, but we'll be holding off on talking any more about these until you're able to get into a beta world and try these out. That's all, just one to keep on your radar. Now for the ones you've been waiting for and we've been dreading. NPC defense changes. Nothing feels quite as good as bringing the right tools for the job and exploiting an NPC's weaknesses to devastating effect. That being said, there are a lot of NPCs who are technically weak to a certain style, but not weak enough for it to really matter all that much. For example, gargoyles are weak to crush, but not by much, and often the kind of player who's killing gargoyles in the first place is better off using an abyssal whip than their best available crush weapon. We'd like to make existing NPC weaknesses feel more pronounced so that gear progression might feel a little less linear on your way to the endgame content, where bringing the right tools for the job becomes more noticeable. We're not looking to change things up to a point where you can't carry on doing what you're doing. To stick with the previous example, using an abyssal whip against gargoyles will still be perfectly fine. It just might be the case that the Sarachnis cudgel pulls ahead ever so slightly, if you have one kicking about. We don't have a full list yet, and there'd likely be too many NPCs to list in this post anyway, so we'll move on for now. Adjusting existing weaknesses is all well and good, but the biggest beneficiary of a change like this is obviously melee. Since it has 3 distinct attack styles, stab, slash, crush, that allow for a lot more gear diversity and also a much broader reward space when it comes to designing new content. Ranged and magics are what they say on the tin. Ranged and magic are what they say on the tin, An NPC weak to ranged is weak to every ranged weapon, and an NPC weak to magic is equally weak to both Tumikin Shadow and Fire Strike. This can make it a little challenging to add new rewards without either power creeping at an unhealthy rate or releasing content that doesn't see much use for many existing players. We'd like to at least take a look at rolling out some new defense types for NPCs and exploring elemental weaknesses. Old School's combat system is iconic and integral to the game, so we are releasing Evolution of Combat. No, I'm kidding. We have no interest in changing the feel and fundamentals of fighting in Old School and want to make sure you're comfortable with the changes, which we'll further outline in this section's dedicated blog. We're not looking to evolve combat. We're looking to create new avenues for rewards and give players a reason to use gear that's super cool, but often just sits in the bank gathering dust. We like to do this by introducing ranged style weaknesses that mirror the breadth of melee weaknesses. Heavy, javelins and bolts, standard, arrows, and light, thrown weapons like knives or darts. And by introducing elemental weaknesses that might shake up magic progression beyond Trident, Sanguinesti, Shadow in the form of air/smoke, water/ice, earth/shadow, and fire/blood. Oh my god. I'm so excited about this, guys. This is one of those things where when you look at the game 10 years from now, I know it seems like, the world's probably ended by that point, but really, this game most likely will be around and probably just as big, if not bigger, 10 years from now. And the way that it's just, we have to make these changes now. This is my honest opinion about it. Yes, Old School is very old school and you got to keep the game how it is, but the game keeps progressing, which is the problem, which nobody has a problem with the game progressing. They just don't want to see old school mechanics get changed. But the problem is when the game keeps progressing, you are pigeonholing yourself, especially when it comes to gear upgrades of like where you can take it. Like they've just pointed out, ranged and magic is literally just, okay, we got to come out with a new weapon that's just going to like that. The Shadow dominates in every single avenue of magic. Like there's just almost no reason to ever use a different magic weapon as soon as you have the best. That's absurd. That's so dumb. And the way to fix it is what they're doing right now, which is a massive project giving monsters elemental weaknesses, like giving monsters, like going in and adjusting these new 3 range styles. I mean, it's going to be a lot, and there's going to be some problems, most likely on release, where things are just completely imbalanced and stuff, but this really is the way forward, in my personal opinion, and it looks like in the team's position as well, so I'm very, very happy that they're actually going down this route. I am so excited to actually be able to use a ballista, and like imagine they can actually come out with more ballistae in the future, so you got like this fucking rapid ballista, or like a ballista for each hand, just like, bazookas basically. But they actually have use at very, very low, I guess, what would it be? Would it be like low defense in the, what did they call it? The heavy style, heavy. So I don't know. It's just going to be really cool to see like your gear tab or like your little character stats tab and see more options that are going on, and then really going through your entire arsenal of weaponry and being like, okay, this is the new weapon for the job. It's going to shake things up a lot. It's not going to just be T-bow, blowpipe. All right, we're done. Like we got the job done. No, it's literally like going in and being able to pull out a crossbow that's actually going to dominate, or pulling out, little throwing darts, or I don't fucking know. Anyway, I'm just going on a tangent, but I'm excited about this. Ultimately, what this boils down to is maybe a heavy ballista is worth bringing to gargoyles if you'd like to kill them with ranged, or that fire giants might take a little extra damage from water/ice spells, which might free us up to make cool new things that fill more gaps without just moving power upwards. We're not going to get into any more right now because this one needs a separate blog. And we won't be releasing the blog until we're ready to go with a playable beta. We appreciate that rebalancing on a scale like this is a lot, and that it would be totally unreasonable to expect you to get a feel for things without being able to get hands-on. So we're not touching anything until you've had ample time to play around. For now, let's keep on trucking. Combat item adjustments. To start off, we'd like to bundle all of the following in with the defense changes beta, or add them to a separate beta of their own so that you can once again get properly stuck in and give us valuable feedback. When we talk about adjustments here, we're separated into two broad categories, and we'll just call them what they are: nerfs and buffs. Historically speaking, it's relatively rare for us to actively rebalance gear, but as the game moves forward, we get a clearer picture of more long-term issues with items that either aren't living up to their potential and benefiting their status, or with items that hurt existing and future reward space and actively make progression feel less rewarding. Here's what we're looking to bring down in power and why. Osmumten's Fang. It's too strong on non-stab styles / and harms the position of other high-value melee weaponry like the Scythe of Viter, Blade of Saildor, or Inquisitor's Mace. Voidwaker. Guaranteed hits, ignoring accuracy checks. And PVM makes it difficult to design worthwhile spec DPS weapons in future without creeping upward significantly. It's always funny because we see these weapons, and whenever, Osmumten's Fangs being talked about or the blowpipe nerf is happening, I just remember seeing so many people commenting well, I just got one, man. I just got that blowpipe. What the fuck, dude? You're ruining my game experience. I'm not gonna be able to, shooty tooty, point and shooty, or whatever the hell they say. But as soon as the Voidwaker is brought out of the guaranteed, I'm you're gonna bring that down. Deep down in my head, I'm just gonna be honest with you. The first impression was no, not the Voidwaker. Just grinded that. But when I really think rationally, yeah, the Voidwaker is unbelievably busted. It's so broken. Really, no accuracy checks, guaranteed hit. That's at least 50% of its max hit. That's just fucking ridiculous. It really is. So I am disappointed. So I'm with you guys. I'm not like that random robot that just can't feel and just oh no, the game's all about balance. I don't care about my actual my experience playing the game. No, I really do. So, but we have to keep in mind that there are things that are broken. Osmumten's Fang, this is another thing where people are no, not the Fang, not the Fang. But it's important. All right, Ancient Godsword. Current healing from special attack elongates outlast fights. Creates too big an HP delta even when prayed against correctly. Yeah, Ancient Godsword's pretty powerful. The spec's pretty powerful. I would say instead of it being a guaranteed 25 heal, I think you just got to scale it off of what it hits. So if it's a absolute max hit, or maybe make it so it's, what is it? Do it so it's 20% or maybe even 25% of what you actually dealt. So if you hit 50 or a 60, for example, with it, then it would heal a 15 because that would be 25%. Something like that. Maybe it can even raise up 30%. So you still can get the occasional 25 heal, but if you hit a 1, you're not going to get a 25 heal. Anyway, that's my own thoughts on that. It's more like a Saradomin Godsword at that point. But the thing is Ancient Godsword has just always had way more DPS than a Saradomin Godsword because you literally get an extra damage that has no delay on it. So it's nice. Occult Necklace. Far too much power in a single item. Bring its power down slightly, fucking majorly, and distribute its magic damage across other parts of magic progression. This is something I've been talking about for literal years. I'm talking beyond the point where I was even streaming. But I've been talking about it since basically episode 1 of the Sebe cast. Literally, the occult is so busted. Drop that shit down because it's out of control. And you could literally drop that down to I'm not even kidding, 5%. You could make some adjustments to even the Tormented, where the Tormented goes down to maybe 4%. I think my initial thing was occult is at 6%. Tormented's at 4%. You could add maybe 2% to Eternal Boots at this point so that the boots actually have a reason to bring. And now we already have the Magus Ring, which is nice. But Augury could be given some damage boost. So, just to kind of move thing. There's just so much where like the occult is just absolutely beyond busted. So yeah, I think this is phenomenal. Great job. Tome of Fire / Water. These need to be kept in mind alongside the potential for elemental weaknesses. If elemental weaknesses pick up some of the slack for elemental damages, these tomes likely become likely. The Tome of Fire is already just out of control private server item. 50. We were just talking about Occult Necklace being 10% and how it's just out of control, been busted for a decade. Then you have the Tome of Fire, which is 5x that. For a fucking shield slot. My brother, like, what the fuck is going on? So yeah, it doesn't really matter right now because elemental spells suck ass and there needs to be a rebalancing. By the way, they've been talking about adding these weaknesses. I am going to just say this is a very, very just TLDR of what I would want to see happen. I'm just going to shove my own agenda in here real quick, but I've talked about this for years, is make it so each tier of elemental spell does the same amount of damage max hit wise. So for example, like when you're casting an air strike and then you're casting a fire strike, that air strike does as much damage as a fire strike would do. Not 4x the amount, like a max hit of 2 and then a max hit of 8. What the fuck is going on? Make it so an air strike can hit just as high as a fire strike, and the same thing goes across the board. So all of these elemental spells actually have a literal use, and you're not just always using fire. Now, I know they're already making it, so you're not going to be using fire all the time, but make it so, air is just as capable as fire, and earth is just as capable as water, and all these other things. Like, I think that's really important when we're going to go down this route. Again, it's sounding a lot like, oh, you're evolving combat, the evolution of combat. No, it's really about providing great balance for the future of this game. And, and the thing is like these spells probably won't even be that useful anyway, just because elemental spells have never been notoriously known to be good, but it's still something where you can open up that avenue, and early level like magic progression would be really, really fun, being able to use different spells against different types. So my personal thoughts. Here's what we're looking to bring up in power and why. Adjust damage on hit to roll from 1 to max hit instead of 0 to max hit. That is beautiful. That is so good. Thank you. This makes early combat feel better. As it stands, if your max hit is a 1, you deal 0 damage 50% of the time that you successfully hit the opponent, which can feel pretty terrible for new players. For every player, it is horrible. It doesn't even feel, it is horrible. Also improves access to information around successful Dragon Warhammers or Arclight hits, for example. Additional considerations required for the 10 HP community, but we'll get to those in the blog dedicated to all these adjustments. Scythe of Viter. Not enough existing use cases, often too expensive to be worth using. More on this later. Elder Maul. Not enough existing use cases. Doesn't really befit its mega rare status. Inquisitors. Extremely rare items. Mace often falls short of other offerings, even in places where Crush should be the go-to, and is vastly more expensive than its equivalent weapons in other styles. I hope they're talking about Inquisitors like the armor as well. It looks like they are rare items. Soul Reaper Axe, a little too frustrating to feel good using. I really hope they buff this because I'm about to get one. I mean, no, that's not the reason. No, real talk though. Soul Reaper Axe is such a badass weapon. It really does need more use cases. Reduce drain rate of bottom tier prayers like Thick Skin, Burst of Strength, etc. Existing drain rates make them effectively unusable in any real capacity when they're unlocked. Improve Sharp Eye and Burst of Strength prayers. Currently, the player needs to hit 20s for these prayers to have any effect, due to how our game handles rounding. What? Really? That's so funny because I didn't ever know that. That's really funny. You like literally need to hit 20s for this to do anything. Yeah, it's funny. Which doesn't really line up with the level they're locked at. It's literally been in the game for 2 fucking decades. It's been absolutely useless. Just entirely useless. That's so funny. Like, I think the funniest part of this is just a little tangent. Like, the funniest part about like starting a brand new account and just like playing like really newbie where you're not actually doing anything efficiently, you're just like running around killing cows, is like, but you understand the game enough to understand that prayers are cool. So you're like, you have fucking like 3 prayer points and you're trying to flick on thick skin and burst of strength and shit. Like, absolutely just dog shit, useless. And you have fucking like 1 to 3 prayer points to work with because you've buried a few bones. It's so cute. It's literally like the cutest fucking thing ever. I remember as a child seeing this burst of strength. I was like, holy, like, I remember like looking down. I'm like, bro, ultimate strength is going to be so badass. Like, it's just so cool. It's like, this guy's so ripped. Anyway, too many tangents. We'll be going into more detail on the Scythe of Viter and Osmumten's Fang in just a moment, but for the rest, we'll be waiting on a dedicated blog and beta before getting into more detail. We know rebalancing is a scary prospect, and we know that nerfs feel bad. Nobody likes having their stuff getting weaker. Our hope is that by making other changes to NPC defense and bringing other gear up in power, we'll be able to carve out room to fill in those gaps and introduce new rewards worth obtaining, rather than letting a handful of items limit what we're able to offer in the future. Speaking of combat item adjustments, Osmumten's Fang and the Scythe of Viter. Osmumten's Fang. Old School's premier tank busting stab weapon was introduced alongside our most recent raid, Tombs of a Masket. Since then, we've seen conversations crop up time and time again about its use across the board and whether its power is healthy. In particular, the release of Desert Treasure 2 and everybody's favorite vampire body puppeteered by a malicious fungus Vardorvis shone a spotlight on the Fang's efficacy when used to slash as opposed to stab. Ultimately, for a stab weapon with no additional usage costs, it sits a little too close to dedicated slash weapons that require upkeep, namely the Blade of Sildor and the Scythe of Viter. We don't want to alter its identity as a seriously strong stab weapon, but we feel like it's necessary to remove a lot of its slashing power and have it properly occupy its niche as a stab weapon, so that dedicated slash weapons are able to shine where they're supposed to. With this in mind, we feel like the cleanest solution is to have the Fang's unique double accuracy roll passive effect apply only to stab. This means that Osmumten's Fang remains a fantastic generalist, since its accuracy re-rolling allows it to perform well even against foes who aren't necessarily weak to stab like Tecton, the Nightmare, or other bosses inside the Theater of Blood. While it's possible that potential changes to NPC defense might diminish the Fang's jack-of-all-trades status somewhat, we still think it will prove to be an immensely valuable pickup and unlock for any player looking to make their first forays into PvM in Old School. What this change does more than anything is make more room for the Blade of Sildor and Scythe of Viter to be worth the cost and further cement the idea that you're bringing the right tools for the job. That being said, the Scythe of Viter could stand to be improved in some areas to make it feel a little more worthwhile. Let's take a look. Scythe of Viter, we'd like to buff the Scythe. Hooray! Let's chat about how and why. Is the Scythe already like shooting up in price on the GE? Somebody let me know. The why is pretty simple and comes up in conversations both within the team and the community. The Scythe of Viter is a mega rare weapon from Old School's hardest raid, but doesn't feel like it occupies the same space as the Twisted Bow or Tumikin's Shadow, since it doesn't have as many use cases as other mega rare weapons. Why do people say it's the hardest raid? Is that actually true? Like, I feel like TOB is the easiest raid. You fucking go in with like 4 Scythers and just get carried your whole time. And even beyond that, if you are the carrier, like that shit's not that hard. I don't know. Am I the only one that thinks that? Like, I just feel like the other two, like TOA can become, the scaling can be way, doing a 600, an 8-man 600, that's way more difficult than doing a fucking like 5-man speed run TOB. I know I'm going to the absolute extremes, but even a 500 TOA, like that's just incredibly hard. The only thing that I think TOB actually solidifies in being the hardest is a solo TOB, but Anyway, I'm not going to start arguing with people. I can already tell somebody's already just smashing their keyboard right now, waiting to just tell me why Theater of Blood is so hard, guys. All right. Anyway, it is hard to get into. Don't get me wrong, because you can't just go in as a solo with you where you can as Chambers and TOA. I'll give you that. Anyway. Maybe it is the hardest. I don't know. No, I'm kidding. No, I don't know, guys. I don't know. I'm just thinking of like the things that are on my mind. I've always actually thought like maybe, I don't know. Chambers is pretty hard too, right? I don't know. I'm lost. Well, yeah. Anyway, we're gonna move on. Its usage cost is one of the highest in the game, with the only more expensive weapon to use being the Toxic Blowpipe with Dragon Darts. By the way, Dragon Darts, did you guys know that these things are under 1,000 GP now each? Like, what the fuck? We got to come out with higher ammo, guys. What do you guys think? Zenite bolts, come out with some Abyssal darts. That'd be amazing. Even at some places where the Scythe is technically best in slot, it's often not good enough compared to second or third best options to feel worth the cost of use. Vardorvis and Duke Succulus encapsulate this fairly well, where Osmumpton's Fang is hot on the Scythe's heels, but has no upkeep cost. The how is a little less simple and needs us to look both short and long term. Long term, we want to commit to adding more content featuring low defense, /weak, 3x3 or bigger bosses, where the Scythe is likely to shine. In recent times, we've been adding more NPCs with higher defense values, and try to make defense feel more relevant in old school as a balancing vector. Historically, you generally bring your hardest hitting weapon to any fight, since monsters either had such low defense that your accuracy didn't matter, or you could just lower their defense to the same point anyway. Players complained that accuracy felt useless as a stat, so we've tried rectifying this in places, but it's hurt the Scythe's usability in the process. The big lesson here is to do a little bit of both. We've added a lot of tanky NPCs recently, and we can pull back and release some low defense ones again to try and keep a healthy balance and let the Scythe shine a little more brightly. It's worth noting that when the Scythe is already good, it's really good. Its DPS potential is beyond that of the Twisted Bow and Tumikin Shadow in many places, and we believe the main thing separating the Scythe from other mega rares is the sheer volume of content where the Twisted Bow and Tumikin Shadow are best in slot. In the short term, we want to make a few direct changes to the Scythe, ultimately aiming to give it an extra edge in a few more instances without overly buffing it in spots where it's already strong, and above all, make it feel good enough to be worth the cost of use. With all this in mind, we want to give the Scythe a slight accuracy buff, so that its use cases are slightly expanded and that it performs a little better against NPCs with slightly more respectable defense levels. Additionally, we've aimed to cut the cost down so that even in places where it doesn't utterly steamroll the second best in slot option, the time saved or extra GP per hour made feels like a worthwhile decision, rather than just a steadily increasing hole in the bank. Add plus 15 / accuracy to the Scythe. This gives the Scythe a slight boost in many of the instances listed above, but doesn't shift its power much in places where defense levels are already very low, TOB being a prime example. In terms of existing use cases, adding plus 15 / accuracy increases Scythe's DPS by 0.2% at a really low defense boss like Big Nilo, 20 defense, but 7% at a boss like General Grardor. Interesting. I'm glad they haven't decided to raise its actual DPS. I think that would just be a huge mistake. 15 / accuracy sounds perfect. I'm also thinking like for the future, like there is a reward space, by the way, for a weapon like the Scythe, as in it does multiple hit splats as a melee weapon, to release a version that's a stab and a crush. I know that sounds like very generic, like the generic formula that Jagex uses, like, oh, we came out with a rapier, now it's come out with a blade of Sildor, and then a fucking mace. No, but really there are these other avenues. So I'm glad they're really focusing on slash, because if they were to say like plus 15 / and plus however much crush, because with Inquisitors, people do use the Scythe to use it on crush. I think it would be cool to have an additional reward space that just can be the sort of 2x2 / bigger monster niche that can really dominate against crush weak people or monsters. Anyway, something to consider, just reward spaces in the future. Reduced charge cost from 1 vial of blood and 300 blood runes to 1 vial of blood and 200 blood runes for 100 charges. The following numbers were taken on November 28th. They may vary slightly at time of reading. This reduced the cost per swing from 776 GP point. Like, what? What's up with the points? Come on. Or this reduces the cost per hour from 935k to 701k. Note that this is an upper cap when in conjunction with the final change on this list. Actual spend is likely to be a little lower. This is approximately 26% usage cost reduction. Only use charge when the Scythe actually hits an enemy. While this isn't a frequent occurrence with the Scythe, since all 3 hits roll accuracy independently, it's likely to add up over extended periods of use. In particular, the Scythe is more likely to miss at enemies with higher defense. Shocker! Which means this change has the most benefit for the Scythe in the places we're in most struggles. So I'll just share my quick thoughts on this. I actually think it would be better. This is my own opinion, so people let me know if this is a bad idea. But make it so the cost is still 300 blood runes, so it is still 3 blood runes per Scythe swing. But make it so that it goes based on actual hit splats. So maybe this will actually be more complicated than it actually is, because the way the charging system works is just already super odd, because it requires a well and 2 different ingredients and all this other shit. But really, well, I don't know. Maybe this is the way they're just going to do it, because I guess in my head, I was just thinking every successful hit splat is 1 blood rune used. So, if you just if 2 of the hit spots are zeros, it's only going to consume 1 blood rune. But I guess I remember that was assuming that vials of blood were out of the equation, which feels like most people aren't actually down for that. I personally, when I think of a charged weapon, I want maximum convenience. And I hate that you have to go to a station and use 2 different ingredients, and it only holds up to 20k charges. I feel like that's obnoxious in and of itself. I really wish that Scythe was just charged with blood runes. That's it. It could store up to 100,000 charges, and basically every single time you get a hit splat with the Scythe, it just consumes 1 blood rune. Like, I don't know. I just think that'd be much more simple. But again, we do have that whole vials of blood thing, which... my personal take is the vials of blood could have a different use. I mean, they really could. I don't know. I'm all about maximum convenience when it comes to charged weapons, because I actually am a huge proponent of charged weapons in the future. But if we continue with this trend of like the most obnoxious, convoluted system of charging shit with limited charges, nobody's going to be on board in the future, because it's just a fucking nuisance to deal with. So anyway, my own opinions. We believe that these changes to the Scythe, intentional long-term boss design, as well as the previously mentioned changes to the Fang, put the Scythe and melee landscape as a whole into a much healthier spot. We're conscious of the fact that it's not a perfect solution and that there's a lot riding on the long-term commitments to intentionally design Scythe spotlighting content, but we'll be looking out for any and all feedback and continuing to keep an eye on the Scythe so that we can get it into the best place possible, and hopefully get more of you into the Theater of Blood. It's really good and absolutely worth the learning curve. That's everything we'd like to do to the Scythe right now. We've seen suggestions over the last few years for extra mechanics under the hood that mess with NPC size or how accuracy rolls on each hit, but ultimately we think a simple approach is better for now, coupled with an ongoing commitment to just make more stuff that Scythe really shines against. Swing, swing. What's next? What's next is mostly just waiting and seeing. Most of the topics within this project are too big to properly grasp just by reading a blog or watching a video. While we're happy to kick the conversation off today, ultimately we want to see for yourself. We want you to see for yourself and give feedback based on experience and feel rather than predictions and spreadsheets. We'll begin rolling out dedicated blogs for all the above sections in early 2024, starting with the skilling-related adjustments before moving into more combat-focused stuff. We don't have any dates set in stone just yet, but we'll look to update you when we're able to start locking in dates, so you have something to look forward to. Hopefully, we've made clear our plans and rationale for the Fang and Scythe in particular, since we get asked about them an awful lot. We don't know at this stage whether we'd look to roll these out before other item adjustments or bundled into one so they interact with other changes that we've mentioned in this blog. We'll keep you posted. If you've made it this far, drop us a message with your initial thoughts and your favorite unusual bird to prove you're paying attention. And your favorite unusual bird to prove you're paying attention. What? We're keen to hear your feedback, and we imagine you'll have a lot of it. So make sure to get in touch with us in all the usual places. Remember that Project Rebalance is a collaborative marathon, not a sprint. We've got time on our hands to prepare dedicated blogs, betas, surveys, and other feedback processes before we really get into the nitty-gritty. So have a think over the holidays and come back refreshed and rebalanced, ready for 2024. Great job, Jagex. This is a phenomenal blog. Really, really excited. There's so many great things. Like, one of the things that really sticks out to me is just changing that whenever you hit a 1 at least. Like, thank God. Like, that is so big. There's so much really cool stuff. I'm so excited. These kinds of style blogs just really keep me grounded in my faith of the team and the game going forward. The fact that they are very, very aware of what their game is, what their game is, what it's providing, what the imbalances are, and they're very much looking to improve it. And this stuff takes time, and they're being very, very careful about it, which is just so important. They're aware of our concerns, and they also want to make the game. They want to just build a great foundation for the game going forward, because this game is just absolutely phenomenal. It's just like, so many people are playing it right now. I mean, leagues obviously is a big factor of that, but seriously, this game is just thriving, and it's really cool to see. Like, even having been out for over a decade, it's still just doing amazing, and it can continue to do amazing, but things need to be balanced properly so we don't go down a route of just everything being dead content and being kind of becoming like RS3, where like it just, you kind of just got to hit the end game before you have any fun. I don't know. It's kind of what people have told. I haven't played RS3, but people tell me it's like everything is dead content in RS3 except for the top echelon of gear and everything else. So anyway, I'm really happy. Thank you, Jagex. For those that have stuck around this long, if you haven't dropped a like, be sure to drop a like. It really supports me as a creator. If you want to support me also on Patreon or YouTube membership directly, there's links down in the description. It seriously helps me out. Happy holidays, everybody, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.